You are welcome to Madi's Docs Bollocks, where we give you the best. We give you the very best in terms of finance, in terms of global enterprise architecture, in terms of emerging techs, AI, and everything technology. Please subscribe if you have not done that. Give us a comment what you think about this video. This particular video is very important to me and it should be important to you too. As a person in tech atmosphere, the person in industrial atmosphere, and also within the supply chain, the global supply chain for that matter, it should be very important to you. So stay with me and let's dissect it. In this video, we are going to audit the Beijing summit by decrypting the 2026 President Trump and President Xi Jinping summit. So what I want you to do is to forget the political theater, the state visit to Beijing between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping this particular week. Now remember, this particular state visit, it was not a diplomatic mission. No, it wasn't. But rather, it was a boardroom negotiation for the future of global infrastructure. Yes, it was delayed since April due to what's happening in Iran. But remember, this particular summit just deployed the highest concentration of US corporate power. US corporate power, the highest ever to land in China, and you should be concerned. So if you are an IT auditor, a founder, or you are managing an enterprise supply chain, here is the unredacted briefing of what actually happened. What actually happened in China, and then the underrated data points that the mainstream media are completely missing. This is the corporate roster and the impact to the world of tech and finance. Trump didn't just bring politicians, no, he brought a 17-member corporate strike team worth nearly $1 trillion in net worth. So before we get into that, let's look at the facts. The facts here. The summit took place in May 13 to 15 of 2026, which happens in Beijing, China, specifically the Great Hall of the People. And then we also know that President Trump went in with 17 major CEOs. That is US CEOs. You can say 18 if you want to include Jensen, who boarded later. So the CEOs include Tim Cook of Apple, Elon Musk of Tesla, SpaceX, and then X, formerly Twitter, Jensen of Nvidia. We also have the financial heavyweights. That's Larry Fink of BlackRock. And then we have David Solomon of Goldman Sachs. These are the financial heavyweights. We have Steven Schwarzman of Blackstone, Kelly Ortberg of Boeing, Brian Sykes of Cargill, Jane Fraser of Citi, and then he brought also the telecom and semiconductor giants, which are Chuck Robbins of Cisco, Christiana Amon of Qualcomm, and Sanjay of Micron. Among the list was Jim Anderson of Coherent, H. Lawrence of GE Aerospace, Jacob Tyson of Illumina, Michael Mayberg of MasterCard, Diana Powell of Meta, and Ryan of Visa. These were the 18 major players Trump brought along to the summit. So here are the outcomes. In basics, it was mentioned that Boeing gets verbal commitment for 200 of 737 MAX jets. This figure is an up from the current 50. The outcomes too is mentioned soya beans purchase pledge. There was a pledge to purchase more soya beans in the future. These are some of the outcomes from that particular summit. So here at Madi's Docs Bollocks, we captured the unexpected. And this is very important. We captured the unexpected under the rather shocking moments that happened in the summit, because this is what we are interested in. This is what we do. We audit what is missing. And the first thing, I'm gonna read it for you. The first thing, we know Jensen wasn't initially invited But he boarded Air Force One during refueling at Anchorage. And then the second thing was that we are going to look at the geopolitical backdrop, which is very important. And yes, it was this particular summit was scheduled in April, but was delayed due to what's happening in Iran or what was happening in Iran. But now, the most powerful board of directors on earth landed in Beijing, and Trump introduced each and every CEO to see. He did that introduction to them, to see, and then to all Chinese people. And later on, Apple's Tim Cook throwing up a peace sign and then a good thumbs up. These are all the facts we are giving you. But we know that it is not just a state visit, as I mentioned that earlier on. At least they also visited the Temple of Heaven, and this is the first of its kind since 1975, when Gerald Ford visited that temple. Since 1975. And then this is why we also audited. China had a strict new supply chain regulation. And this regulation, which was announced in April last month, seeks to penalize foreign companies from conducting due diligence on Chinese firms. And the impact here is that Xi is using these American executives as a stabilizing force for his economy. He needs them to signal to the global market that China is still investable. That's what he was trying to do. China is still investable, whilst the US is leveraging them to secure physical supply lines in the volatile world. This is what we did, and this is what we uncovered, that the mainstream media isn't just propagating for you to know. So here are the cautious statements we have to read in between the lines to understand. In public, the statements were perfectly engineered. Xi Jinping told the American delegation that China's door to business will only open wider and wider, and that's very brilliant. Announcing a new vision of strategic stability, and yes, to everybody's favorite, they talk about AI. And then Trump declared that he had brought the greatest businessmen in the world to expand cooperation. But here's the caution. There's a caution here. It is conditional. Xi's promise of an open door comes directly on China's terms. Directly on China's terms. Behind closed doors, they are negotiating a massive friction point. Washington snowballing export controls on American AI technology versus Beijing's state support for its own industries. This is what is happening behind closed doors, and we should pay attention. This is the finance and tech outlook. The immediate financial outlook yielded verbal commitments, a lot of them. Trump announcing China agreed to buy 500 Boeing 737 MAX jets. That's a massive jump from the 50 aircraft deal, along with a surge in soybeans purchase. But the tech outlook is where the real war is fought. The presence of Apple and Cisco signals an attempt to thaw the freezing tech relations. However, the absence of the sweeping signal treaty on AI safety or semiconductor tariffs means enterprise IT managers must continue to price in hardware volatility for the next 2 quarters. There are some shocking anomalies to this whole summit, which are underreported, and we are going to talk about them. And when the media start to gloss over them, definitely it tells you that you have to pay attention to those particular anomalies. And the first anomaly is the Anchorage Intercept. We have already established that the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen, he was not initially part of the White House list, but as Air Force One made a refueling stop in Alaska, he suddenly boarded the plane. And here is the catch. The CEO of the world's most important AI chipmaker being added at the 11th hour tells us exactly how critical semiconductor leverage was to this particular summit or this particular negotiation. Anomaly 2, the due diligence trap. While Xi promised open doors, the media ignores Beijing's sweeping new supply chain regulations. The regulation that was announced just last month. These new rules allow Chinese authorities to penalize foreign companies for conducting basic due diligence on Chinese suppliers and even impose exit bans. You are being invited to invest, but you are legally restricted from auditing your partners or auditing the suppliers. That's weird, right? But we should pay attention. The geopolitical latency is increasing. And if your hardware pipeline relies entirely on the Asia Pacific region, you need to diversify like yesterday. The data is clear. Subscribe to Madi's Bollocks for more forensic systems and others. Let's get to work.